Our guest is the foremost journalist of his generation. He has a new book out called Securing Democracy about his reporting, which led to the freeing of former President Lula of Brazil. And he recently resigned over censorship from the online news publication The Intercept, an organization he helped found. You can read all of his writings at greenwald.substack.com. Please welcome Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Glenn Greenwald. Hi, Glenn. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, Jimmy, I'm really excited. The problem is I'm so bedazzled by your shirt, so distracted by its beauty that I don't know if I can focus on your jokes and your questions. So you should think about that as well the next time you have a guest on. But I'll do my best.
Okay, please, please try to focus. I'll button it up. I won't show any skin or anything.
And he's straight-faced.
Okay, you're welcome.
He's always straight-faced on this.
No,
Nice work.
So I wanted this. You wrote this great story. You caught Rachel Maddow was in a court battle because she recently said that the reporters for OAN network were literally paid by the Russians. Right? She says lots of crazy stuff all the time. Like here's one of the things she says.
One of the things we learned just this week from the intelligence director is that part of the disastrous Trump COVID response is that Trump put in a key COVID response role one of the people who helped Russian intelligence with its 2020 election attack.
She got right.
I mean, how do you
She's
even
still
begin
babbling about
to unwrap?
Russia? Like, this is recent, this week?
That's amazing, isn't it? Isn't that amazing?
I've said before, like, she's going to be... She and like a bunch of other liberals like Ezra Klein and Matt Yglesias, they're going to be like in nursing homes and they're going to have like drool running out of their mouth. And they're going to be like, what about her emails? Like in response to anything. But Rachel is going to be babbling about the Kremlin.
She wants people to start she wants that. Well, listen, I want to play this because it gets crazy.
How do you even begin to get accountability for that? And when does the Justice Department start knocking on people's doors about this stuff? I mean, this is not a normal level of stuff that needs fixing. This is nutty stuff. This is nutty.
Yes, it is.
She's right about that.
She's right about. It's like she's trying to convince herself there's something to this. And this all. I just want to. I was going to save this to the end, but I just want to start with this now because of that. Biden's keeping Trump's pick for Moscow ambassador in place. So the guy that Trump had as the ambassador to Russia, Biden is keeping him. So all this stuff, just everyone shut up already. Okay, so let's get to this story. All right.
Can you do the power surge thing?
Yes. Okay, sure. Sure.
Just for me, I've seen it 1,000 times, but I can never see it too much. It'll be such a nice way to begin.
And it is like negative 50 degrees in the Dakotas right now. What would happen if Russia killed the power in Fargo today? Right? What would happen if all the natural gas lines that service Sioux Falls just poofed on the coldest day in recent memory, and it wasn't in our power whether or not to turn them back on? I mean, what would you do if you lost?
What would you and your family do?
Definitely, as the act of a foreign power. On the same day, the temperature in your front yard matched the temperature in
Antarctica. Spit it out.
What would you and your family do?
What?
It's like my favorite song. It's like I can say it with her now. I've watched it so many times.
What would you do if all of a sudden the natural gas just went poof and you didn't have the power? All right, let's get to this. This is fun.
All right.
It's fun. It's nice to have laughs, but let's get down to business.
Yeah, let's get serious.
So here, a court recently ruled that Rachel Maddow's viewers know she offered exaggeration and opinion and not facts. So this is from your article about this. MSNBC's top-rated host, Rachel Maddow, devoted a segment in 2019 to accusing the right-wing cable outlet One American News, OAN, of being a paid propaganda outlet for the Kremlin, right? In this case, she announced the most obsequiously pro-Trump right-wing news outlet in America really literally is paid by Russian propaganda. That she said literally. That's a quote. Okay. In response, OAN sued Rachel Maddow and MSNBC and its parent corporation Comcast for defamation. Makes sense. You would think they would do that. And out of all the many things you could criticize a far right-wing network for, and she had to make something up. Isn't that kind of amazing? It is to me. In an oddly overlooked ruling, an Obama-appointed federal judge dismissed the lawsuit on the grounds that even Maddow's own audience understands that her show consists of exaggeration, hyperbole, and pure opinion, and therefore would not assume that such outlandish accusations are factually true, even when she uses the language of certainty and truth when presenting them. Literally is a paid Russian propaganda. That's the quote. The judge also went on to say that Maddow's show is different than a typical news segment where anchors inform viewers about the daily news. The point of Maddow's show is for her to provide the news, but also to offer her opinions on the news. I love how the first part of the judge's statement is a total burn. Rachel's news show is different from other news shows in that it's not actually news. That is such a burn.
This is her winning the case. This is her lawyers arguing this and the judge accepting it in her favor.
Yeah, this is amazing. Keeps going. Therefore, the court finds that the medium of the alleged defamatory statement makes it more likely that a reasonable viewer would not conclude that the contested statement implies an assertion of objective fact. So when she said literally, she literally didn't mean literally. She literally meant figuratively. Okay. The court ruled that Maddow's own viewers not only expect but desire that she will not provide the news in factual form, but will exaggerate and even distort reality in order to shape her opinion-driven analysis. They watch the news, but not for news. Isn't that interesting? Judge also went on to say viewers expect her to do so, as it is indeed her show, and viewers watch the segment with the understanding that it will contain Maddow's personal and subjective views about the news. So let me break this down. Subjective view, I don't like OAN's programming. It's far right, and I disagree with all their takes. Not a subjective view, I'm going to make up where a place gets their funding from because I don't like them. You see the difference? I see the difference. Okay. Here's more from the judge. Thus, the court finds that as a part of the totality of the circumstances, the broad context weighs in favor of a finding that the alleged defamatory statement in Maddow's opinion and exaggeration, and the reasonable viewers would not take the statement as factual. Ironically, those most guilty of being unreliable liars and propagandists, and those in the media, and even Maddow's own MSNBC colleagues who repeatedly cite Tucker Carlson's court ruling to delegitimize him without ever mentioning that Maddow's lawyers successfully used the same arguments in her defense. This actually happened. So Tucker Carlson, I wasn't familiar with this, but Tucker Carlson had to do the same kind of argument, or did the same kind of argument in a court case. And so MSNBC and people and Chris Hayes and lots of people would point to this all the time. Fox News won a court case by persuasively arguing that no reasonable viewer takes Tucker Carlson seriously. That's exactly what Rachel Maddow just argued on her behalf in court. And here's Chris Hayes saying, similar to Fox News' defense in court of Tucker Carlson, these people are obviously bullshit artists who no one should trust. I guess he feels the same way about Rachel Maddow now. I guess. I don't know. So falsely accusing people of being paid Kremlin agents has a long and ugly history in the United States, having destroyed reputations and careers. Yet this smear has once again become utterly commonplace in Democratic Party politics. That's true. I've experienced it. A protracted and ugly feud was initiated earlier this month when the Young Turks' Cenk Uygur baseless and false claimed that journalist Aaron Mate was paid by the Russians. So, all right. So that brings us back. So let's just come back to Glenn. First of all, great article. I agree with the 100%. And I wasn't aware of that. I don't know how I missed it. Of the unbelievable irony that they would use Tucker Carlson arguing the exact same thing as proof that Tucker Carlson's full of shit. But here it is, Rachel Maddow, and everybody's pretending like they don't see it, right?
Well, this is the key context, Jimmy, is, as you may know, I periodically go on the Tucker Carlson show. I'll ironically be doing that immediately after this program. And so I've been hearing for, I don't know, a year now, all of these liberal pundits and journalists saying, why would you go on a show when even Fox's own lawyers acknowledge, in fact, argue in court, that the things Tucker says is total bullshit and that nobody should believe them. In fact, they want a court case based on that. Now, I never really bothered to answer it or address it because being a lawyer myself, having litigated a bunch of defamation cases when I was a lawyer, I know exactly what happened there, which is, of course, when you have a lawyer and you're sued for defamation, you want that lawyer to make every argument in your defense to get the case dismissed. And so all that happened was Fox's lawyers went into court and said, look, when Tucker says stuff, his viewers understand that he uses hyperbole, he uses drama, he's kind of commenting on the news, he's infusing it with his own take. They don't think that it's always purely factual. And in that case, the statements were obviously his own kind of melodramatizing, but they constantly use it to say, showed in that Chris Hayes tweet, even Fox's own lawyers admit that Tucker Carlson is bullshit. So I've been hearing this for a year. About a week ago, I was researching something and I stumbled onto this case without actually knowing about it because it is amazing. If you go and Google Tucker Carlson, Fox News's lawyers, say that no one believes him, you'll find hundreds of articles in NPR, the Washington Post, the New York Times. I had no idea that there was this court case where the MSNBC's lawyers made exactly the same arguments because no one talked about it. So I stumbled onto it by accident. And amazingly, that court case actually was issued prior to the one that dismissed the one against Tucker. So in fact, Rachel not only used the same argument, she was the pioneer. And in her case, it was much more serious. I mean, she didn't, make some kind of obviously hyperbolic statement. She, as you pointed out, said they're literally paid agents of the Kremlin. And MSNBC's lawyers went into court and said, come on, Judge, it's Rachel fucking Maddow. No one takes that shit seriously. No, I actually don't agree with that ruling. I don't think MSNBC viewers have the discernment to know that when she makes a claim where she says literally paid Russian propaganda, that she doesn't actually mean it. I think they do think that she means it. I think this Obama-appointed judge was looking for a way to defend Rachel Maddow. Maybe you can kind of err on the side of saying, okay, we don't want journalists being sued easily, although I do think, as I said in that article, that it has become a pathology in Democratic Party politics to just simply accuse people casually like it's fun of being paid agents for the Kremlin. That whole drama that you've had with, Anna and Cenk and Aaron Mate and the whole YouTube world started because on a segment, Cenk was annoyed and did what Democratic hacks do, which is he accused Aaron Mate of being a paid agent of the Kremlin. He said he's paid by the Russians. He just fabricated that out of nowhere. So I actually think that it's past time for Democrats to be sued when they do this. But the irony, Jimmy, is that go to Google right now and try and find news outlets reporting on that same exact argument that Rachel's lawyers made the way they did for Tucker, and you'll barely find anything, which is why I reported it, because I was amazed. I've been hearing about this for a year, even from MSNBC people. Oh, look, Tucker's own lawyers say he's full of shit and everyone knows it. And their own fucking lawyers made exactly the same argument in defense of Rachel, and she won with it. You just read it. But it's amazing how easily you can find media outlets talking about Tucker doing that and almost none of them talking about Rachel Maddow's lawyers doing it.
So, and, people still give me a hard time because Tucker invites me on his show to talk about what I want to talk about, which is usually anti-war stuff or pro-Julian Assange stuff or the corruption inside the Democratic Party. That's the stuff that that's my wheelhouse. And so he brings me on and I go on to talk to half the country. And you know why I do that? Because I get to talk to half the country and nobody else. I'm not turning down other requests. When every time you see me on Tucker Carlson, that should make you angry that Chris Hayes, Rachel Maddow, Chris Cuomo, and Anderson Cooper don't invite people like me on their shows, ever. They'll have 3 pro-war people on a panel all the time with never someone like me, ever. And so when I go on Tucker, it's because he lets me say things about my anti-war stances. He lets me talk and argue in favor of Julian Assange's freedom. In fact, he even said that based on my arguments, partly he changed his mind.
He changed his mind, which is the point of politics, is to change people's minds that don't already agree with you. Any moron can go and feed things to people who already agree with you on things. It's much more difficult, but much more meaningful to go change the minds of people who are watching television, or better yet, the most influential commentator on the news. Like right now, when I go to Tucker's show, I'm not going on to like defend Donald Trump or Mitch McConnell. I'm going on to talk about all the ways that the NSA continues to spy on Americans' conversations without warrants and then lies about it to the public using their standard formula of propaganda that I reported on in 2013 and 2014 during the Snowden reporting. That's something I would never be allowed to go talk about on CNN or MSNBC, which is filled with NSA agents. Let me just tell you one quick thing about that, Jimmy. There's this right-wing writer. He's a young right-wing writer named Pedro Gonzalez. I don't know if you've run into him or not. His parents are immigrants from Mexico. He's 100% Mexican. He was born here, raised here. He used to be, like in 2016, kind of a Bernie supporter, and he realized the left was full of shit in the U.S. for a lot of reasons that you talk about. He's kind of on the right, but very heterodox. So he's become like a frequent guest on Tucker's show, this child of Mexican immigrants, on Tucker's White Power Hour. And the last 2 times that he was on, the second to last time that he was on, he went on to talk about the fact that BlackRock, the slimy private equity firm, is buying up so much real estate in the United States that middle-class Americans are no longer able to afford a home because it's driving up the housing market artificially. And so it's turning the entire American middle class into a kind of to like these serfs who just are a group of renters. And like owning your own home was the foundation of the American dream. And it's now being destroyed because Wall Street hedge funds are buying up homes at such large numbers that nobody can afford to buy a house anymore. And they talked about the implications for the working class. The last time that he was on, which is about 3 days ago, he went on and he talked about why Bill Gates is buying up insane amounts of American farmland. So he's by far the biggest single owner of farmland on the planet. And how that, too, is squeezing out small farmers from being able to own their own farmland and instead will have to rent. And it gives Bill Gates enormous power. These are things that are so fundamental, so foundational to what the left, the actual left, should care about. And yet the only place you will ever hear them discussed is on the Tucker Carlson show. If you turn on MSNBC, you hear that crazy unwell woman babbling about the fucking Kremlin 6 months after Donald Trump left office. So who in their fucking right mind would not go on a program and speak to 4 million people when it's the only one that gives you an opportunity to do things like make the pitch to Donald Trump about why Julian Assange should be pardoned, or argue against the American war machine, or argue against the devastation to the middle class that Wall Street hedge funds and predatory capitalism is wreaking.
Well said. I couldn't. The fact that her show brings on the people straight from the CIA to inform you on foreign policy should tell you it actually isn't a news show. It's a propaganda show. They don't even try to hide it anymore. They do it right out in the open. And the way the Democratic left, or I don't like to call them left. We really do have a one-party rule, and it's just it's a sham, not kind of a sham. It's a total sham. They both work for the same people. And for them to embrace the FBI, the NSA, the CIA as the good guys, as they have done it, it is the most mind-blowing thing. It's like they became right-wingers now. Even the right wing is skeptical of the FBI and the CIA. There's more people on the right skeptical of our foreign wars than there are in the Democratic Party. It's a mind-blower to me, if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I made it my Twitter header because I find it so central to understanding American political life in the post-Trump era. There is a Pew survey that asks whether or not you hold particular institutions in high esteem. And there's an amazing partisan gap between Democrats and Republicans when it comes to two institutions in particular that are the most pernicious in American political life since the end of World War II, which are the CIA in terms of foreign activity, and although increasingly domestic, and the FBI. Democrats, by a significant margin, love and revere and hold in high esteem those two agencies, those security state agencies, more than Republicans do. So I think that one of the most amazing things, Jimmy, is, in part of the kind of formative event of how I look at politics and how I do journalism was the Church Committee, which was the kind of post-Watergate investigation led by this liberal senator from Idaho, Frank Church, that he looked into the NSA. No one even knew what the NSA was. In Washington, the joke was NSA stood for no such agency. I mean, no one in the Congress even knew it existed. They looked into the CIA. They looked into the FBI and found extraordinary abuses. Just these guys off doing all this rogue stuff, like really evil experiments, all kinds of stuff that was completely outside democratic accountability. And the Church Committee was there to kind of institute reform. And one of the things they discovered was this thing called Operation Mockingbird, which was the program by which the CIA and the other security state operatives would try to clandestinely influence American media coverage to disseminate propaganda to the American public through these agencies. They would launder it through the New York Times, the Washington Post, CBS, ABC. Operation Mockingbird is now completely obsolete. They don't need it. They do it right out in the open, There was that article that was done by Revolver News and then amplified by Tucker. I also wrote about it, questioning the extent to which the FBI had informants in the three organizations they claim were behind the January 6th riot, the Three Percenters, the Oath Keepers, and the Proud Boys. And CNN and MSNBC, in order to debunk that story and those questions, brought on one FBI agent after the next, all of whom work for CNN and MSNBC. So there was literally a quote. This is an actual quote. Chris Cuomo was talking about this story, and he said, "Now to get the truth, my colleague, the former acting director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe," who not only was he was actually the deputy director. He called him the director.
He got caught lying.
Andrew McCabe, yeah, he got caught lying to the FBI. He was almost prosecuted for it. That's what drove him out of the FBI. He immediately goes to CNN, just like James Clapper, who lied to the Senate when he was asked whether the NSA keeps dossiers on American citizens by the millions, and he lied, which is what ultimately provoked Snowden to make the final choice to come forward with this information. After getting caught lying to the American public, CNN then goes and hires James Clapper as well. So they not only have security state agents shaping the news, they get the ones who lie on purpose to then become employees of these news organizations. That is what liberals are consuming, is propaganda from the NSA, the FBI, the CIA. And that's why when Tucker Carlson just came out with this report saying that he thinks that the NSA is spying on him, or that, he got a report saying that they are, liberals just don't believe it. They don't think the NSA would do anything like that. They love the NSA. They believe the NSA with whatever they say. Liberals are authoritarians. The overarching attribute of American liberalism is reverence for institutions of authority and a reflexive belief that what they're saying is true.
I couldn't agree more. I've bumped up against it just with my lefty news YouTube host friends. They're very they're very pro-censorship, and they're very into the institutions of power. They're very into the intelligence agencies. It's nuts. But let me, you brought up, let's go to Steph, and let me set up this next story because it goes right into what you were saying. Could you go to Steph, please?
Let's go to Steph.
Okay.
Let's go, Steph.
Let's go to Steph. Thank you, Glenn.
My favorite part of the show when we go to Steph.
I already like Glenn Greenwald, but that monologue he just gave was so brilliant, eloquent, so impressed. I love this show, and that was from Do What's Right on Twitter. Do What's Right. Wheat Biscuit, what are you doing, Wheatie? Zachary, you see Kyle vid on you. It not a must watch. Keep it up. And now back to Jimmy Dore.
I haven't seen the video yet that Kyle did, but my producer has seen it and other people have seen it, and they've been telling me what's in it. They told me, and I find this hard to believe. I'm going to watch it after the show, but I find it hard to believe that he would talk about that situation with Anna trying to weaponize a story and a settled issue from 7 years ago because her back was up against the wall and she was getting called out for McCarthy smears. And they said he didn't tell people that she was trying to blackmail me, and that he made it sound like I just started talking about her clothes on my show one day. And so I don't know if that's true. I'm going to have to watch the video. So if that would be sad if that is the truth, but whatever. A lot of people are unraveling over this story. And me being an outside comedian, I'm a real outsider when it comes to journalism and I already have more friends than I can use in comedy. I'm not looking for any more friends in journalism. And so it gives me this freedom that other people don't have. And it allows me to be more authentic, which is why I think I was the only one that came out of Forced to Vote with their integrity intact. So, and that goes for Ryan Grimm, that goes for all the people covering it, that goes for people on the other side calling healthcare candy, stuff like that. It's okay. But let's get to this story, and we'll deal with the sad. That's too bad. But anyway, so
can I just add one point on that, Jimmy? Because I do want to say, like, one of the things that I actually was enthused by was you did have actually some outspoken allies in the Force the Vote campaign. You had Breonna Joy Gray, you had Justin Jackson. Like, there were a good number of people.
Cornel West.
The majority of the left media was, of course, on the side of AOC. Like, she's just a young woman. You shouldn't be attacking her this way. It's violence. It's asking too much of her. But I do think it was great that you actually inspired with this plan that you created a fair number of, like, the better commentators and analysts on the left to join you in that campaign and then spend weeks, if not longer, in the case of Breonna, defending it.
I appreciate you saying that. And Kyle was one of the most eloquent defenders of Forced to Vote.
Yeah. Yep.
I encouraged him to write a book. I couldn't believe. I was like, wow, you should be a writer. Anyway, so thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. And it was definitely the weirdest experience of my life so far, Glenn, that I thought I was pushing something that was an agreed upon strategy on the left to force a vote. Everybody ran on it. The people I was asking to do it were the people who ran on doing such a thing. And so it was just mind-blowing to see if you try to get people health care in the middle of a deadly pandemic in the richest country in the world, people will smear you as a right-winger, a grifter, and every bad thing, the Nazi, and whatever they could do, they'll do. And it came right from the establishment. Hey, everybody, this is the part where I tell you where all our live shows are, but there aren't any. And then this is why I tell you to join our premium program and get extra content, but nobody's got a fucking job. So just enjoy the video.